I was born in Galway, and my mother's father is from the Aran Islands, which is an Irish-speaking island off the coast of Galway. And so some of my greatest childhood memories are of sitting in his kitchen with my grandmother making us tea, and visitors would come in. A lot of his nephews were fishermen, and they would bring fish, or his cousins would come in to speak with him in Irish, and I would just sit and absorb it. And so from a young age, I understood that there was behind much of Irish culture this, not exactly a secret language, but definitely a minority language that gave Irish English its flavor and its passion and its interesting details.
So, who in the family spoke Irish?
Well, everybody in Ireland speaks Irish because you learn it in school. But in terms of being a native speaker, that was my grandfather. Yeah, well, I would, even when we moved to America, I would spend my summers with my grandparents, and they were hugely influential to me. So that's how I started spending time with older people. There was my mother's parents who lived in Galway, and I adored my grandmother, and she would bring me around shopping or doing her garden, or they had willow pattern plates and the aga stove, and people and neighbors would always come in for chats, and it was a very much of a community feel, and I loved that. And then I noticed my grandfather, he would speak to me in English, and he was quite taciturn. He was a policeman. But then I noticed when our relatives came in and started speaking to him in Irish, he became a whole different person. He became loquacious and vibrant, and he didn't drink much, but they would often give him a glass of whiskey. And the big joke is he'd be there talking, and everybody would be talking and listening, or I'd be listening, and the whiskey would always be empty, but nobody would ever see him drink it. But he clearly did. So and then my father's mother, she lived in County Mayo, and she was just a brilliant storyteller, kind of the first great performer that I met. Her name was Anne O'Brien, and she lived in Louisburg, and her husband died when I was about 5 or 6, and he was a very literary man, so he had deep interest in literature. And she would tell the most incredible stories that would just have you weeping and laughing at the same time. And they weren't Irish legends or things like that. She was definitely a Shanachui, an Irish storyteller. But her stories were about her friends and her relatives. And, so many people from her generation, it wasn't far removed from the famine, dealt with incredible poverty and had to go to England to make money, where they were treated terribly, and had, jobs in maids as factories. And her brother died over there, and his coat got caught in a bus. And the way she described the scene of his death, it was just the most tragic. I mean, she would love to get you laughing, right? And then she would love to punish you for the laughter with some terrible, tragic turn that would have you in tears. And, the story of her brother's death was one of them. So I would go between my two grandmothers, and they were definitely, two of the most interesting, lovely, wonderful people that I knew. And I like to spend time with them as much as I like to spend time with my friends.